Okay, so I'm gonna get a little bit more specific on some EQ things now. If you haven't, please go back and watch, before you watch this or any of the other EQ videos that I'm about to make involving like specific instruments, please go back and watch my general EQ video so you have an understanding of how to use these controls as well as what it's actually doing to the sound. So right now I'm gonna show you about EQing a vocal. And the thing about this is everybody's a little bit different. Obviously, like male voices are a little different than female voices, all that kind of stuff. And I don't really like presets. I don't like setting something like one way for everything. But I am gonna kind of show you a preset, sort of. I'm gonna show you just a place to start and hopefully just using kind of your ear, what sounds good, what sounds bad, trial and error. You can mess around with this and get the right fit for all of your vocalists. But I'm gonna show you kind of how I would just start a bass for a vocalist. And then I'm gonna actually test it on one of the mics and let you hear the difference. So, okay, here we go. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over here and turn on this high pass filter. There is another video about that as well if you aren't familiar with what a high pass filter does. Unfortunately, you don't have a low pass filter on this board or on the other board that the campuses use, but I'll explain that. That's explained in the other video. Okay, so I usually set this to about, you can see it moving, and the knob will light up to show you what frequency you're at. When you're actually changing the knob, you'll notice the orange lights are showing you what frequency. So for a vocalist, I'll probably set this to about 160. This is to cut out the low frequencies. So the reason you want to do that is because you don't want your vocalist, who might have a super bassy voice, to sound more like bass than your bass guitar does, or than your kick drum does. You want that range freed up for the kick drum and the bass. And we talked about that in the philosophy of mixing video, also another one to go back and watch if you haven't watched it yet. We talked about that in that video about how you want to take up the whole frequency range. So we're going to cut out the low frequencies for that. So now I've got the low mid set to about 500. Once again, you can look at the orange lights and see where everything is set at. And again, you're probably going to adjust this a little bit, but I've got the low mid set to about 500. So I'm gonna bring that down a little bit. That's just an extra dip to clean that up a little bit more, to take a little bit more of those low frequencies out. Okay, so let's go up to the high mid. I've got the high mid set up to about 3.15K. So this is actually 3,000 kilohertz is supposed to be the most like pleasing frequency to your ears. That's something I was taught in one of my classes, but so I'm gonna do a little bit of a peak there. I'm gonna go to like 4 dB peak at 3K. And you may actually, sometimes you actually want to dip that. Sometimes there's like so much of that frequency naturally in someone's voice that you want to actually take that out because you don't want too much of it. So that's where you have to kind of just learn to, once you keep doing this, your ears get better. And that's where you kind of just have to learn like, oh, it sounds good when I do this to this vocalist, but if I do the same thing to Shayla's voice that I do to Leon's voice, it's not going to sound good. So basically I'm going to go ahead and set that up a little bit. So that's like plus 4 dB right now, a raise on that one. Okay, so now the last thing is the high frequencies. So this is like where you're going to get a lot of energy in your vocals, is going to be in the treble range. So I'm going to actually boost that a little bit as well. So it's set like a shelf, so it doesn't peak like the other ones do, but I'm going to raise that one up about 4 dB also, maybe between 2 and 4. You don't want too much of that because it's going to start to sound like a tin can, but you want a little bit of that treble poking out because you don't want a lot of bass, but you do want to hear the treble. You want to hear the upper end because that's where a lot of that energy is going to lie in a voice. So now I'm going to set the phone up in front of the stage by the speakers, and I'm going to let you hear the difference. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it through the phone, hear the difference with the EQ and without EQ. Okay, I'm just really quickly going to show you the difference between the two of these applied. So right now I've got the reverb turned up a little bit, I've got the EQ and the high pass filter on. So we're going to walk up here so we can hear it a little bit better. Sorry again if these videos are making you a little dizzy, but okay. So walking up here to the front, hopefully you'll be able to hear what's coming out of the speaker a little bit better. So up here you're still getting a lot of that low frequency, you're still getting a lot of bass, but you're not getting as much as you would be getting with it off, which I'm going to show you in just a second. So yeah, you're hearing a little bit of peak in the high frequencies. You're hearing way less low frequencies than you would normally be hearing if I didn't have the EQ or the filter on. So this is pretty clear. This is about as clear as my voice is going to sound in a microphone. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to show you the difference between having it on and having it off. So this is with no EQ, no high pass filter. So you're hearing a lot of bass in my voice. You're hearing way too much low frequency that you don't really want to hear. The high end sounds super muffled. It's almost like I'm talking through like a rag or something like that. So you're definitely not hearing as much clarity as you want to hear. You're hearing way too much low end. So if I was talking like this right now, if I was singing like this especially, my voice would be basically colliding with the bass and the kick drum. And you also would hear none of those actual like pleasant frequencies that you want to hear from my voice. Or from any singer's voice, not just my voice. But yeah, so I'm gonna go back, turn it back on now, and let you hear the final comparison between the two. All right, and finally, this is EQ'd with effects up, so this is kind of what it would sound like if I was actually singing. So I'm gonna walk back a little bit so you can hear it from actually out in the room. My phone, microphone's not gonna do a great job of picking all this up, but this is pretty centered, so this is hearing it with EQ, with effects. So this is what, similar to what you might want it to sound like if you're recording a vocalist, so, or EQing a vocalist, I mean. So it's not gonna be the same for everyone. Everybody's not gonna have the same voice, but this is something you can start with, you can build off of it, you can tweak it until it sounds right for your particular vocalist.